שעה.
מי פה היום? מה עברתי?
תשאלי אותו.
אוקיי. Okay, hi guys. Bon appetit, whoever is eating, feel free to eat, drink, whatever. So I'm Ayan, Innovation and Business Creation, EAT, the European Union's Institute for Innovation and Technology, the Israeli office. Soon you're going to hear more about it. So today you can see our powerful panel, the amazing panel that is in a minute going to introduce themselves. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the innovation and technology connection, the Israel-Europe connection on that field. I can say that in the past few years, this connection became stronger and stronger. We see a lot of interest from the Israeli industry in European talent and technology and vice versa. We can see that there is more than 300, even more than 350 MNCs, multinational corporates from Europe that are establishing innovation activities in Israel, if it's hubs, if it's investment, or just being here. Like we like to say, if you're not here, you not exist in the Israeli ecosystem. And today we wanted to give you different angles of this connection from the enabler, from the ecosystem side, from the government, and from the corporate, the giants, the tech giant side. So this will be in a second. We just want to understand who is in the room a little bit. Maybe this will help us to navigate our answers. So, yeah.
I think what you offer is interesting for everybody,
okay.
and you see that they are not ashamed to ask questions. So.
Okay, good, yeah.
I am the only thing, remember, this is an academic-oriented place.
Yes.
אתם תגידו מה שאתם רוצות.
Academic which are trying, because you are now here, to open up
Yes.
to also other public, which are not only academic and only paper, but most of the people are either government or academics, and very few represent the private.
Amazing.
So this is a
Thank
meeting
you.
of government officials who are trying to become more academic.
Yeah, let's start. Thank you for this comment. We will try to open maybe some questions later. So, hi ladies. If you want to maybe by order, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, just to give the background, what is your position, and then we can dive in.
So good morning, everybody. It's really nice to be here. My name is Tal Vardi. I am coming from a big corporate, multinational corporate called Novartis. It's a Swiss-based pharmaceutical company, R&D based with subsidiaries all across the world. We touch multiple therapeutic areas in the field of medicine. In my current role, I lead the Central Eastern European Biome, which is the innovation arm for Novartis. We're focused on digital health, so everything which relates to, on one hand, medicine, addressing pain points coming from medical fields with new innovative technology is within my shop. I'm glad to be here.
Amazing, thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Sri Kimchi. First of all, thank you for organizing this panel and great video. I'm from the government, I'm business and development director and also in charge of the financial instruments in ISERD. ISERD is part of the international division of Israel Innovation Authority. I guess you're familiar with Israel Innovation Authority, the governmental entity that supports R&D projects. IIA is mostly funding the R&D projects in the industry. We do have projects that is and programs that is a bridge between the academia and implementation of research in the industry. And ISERD is a bit different from that, with the Israeli European Directorate, and we are the official focal point that in charge of the Israeli participation in the European program, which mainly is Rise in Europe. This essence, we work with academia, industry, and actually any legal entity, because most of the program is a consortium. In consortia submission, which is actually involve all kinds of entities in submission. So this is where the Horizon program really aims. And Horizon, Horizon program, Horizon Europe program is the framework program of research and innovation with the largest budget in the world, about total budget of 95.5 billion euros that is invested in all types of thematic areas, as well as for academia, non-profit, and industry. So ICER is in charge of course promoting the Israeli participation on that, and of course helping to represent the Israeli interests with the European Commission. And of course I see here people from the government, our potential partners, Lena, Dani, speak to you.
Thank you, Sari. Hi, everybody. My name is Adina, and I'm here from EAT, from the EAT Hub in Israel. EAT, as Maya mentioned at the beginning, is the European Institute for Innovation and Technology. Basically, essentially, it's the largest innovation community in Europe. EAT was established around 15 years ago after the European Commission sort of sat down and realized, they said, okay, we're very sort of strong in industry, strong in manufacturing, but we're kind of lagging behind in all that comes to innovation compared to North America, compared to Asia. And they established EAT, which is funded half publicly. So half of the funding comes from the European Commission, half is from private partners. So industry partners can actually pay an annual fee to become partners of EAT, and that way gain access to all that's going on in the community. The goal of EAT is actually to connect between the three corners of what they call the innovation, the knowledge triangle, which is academia, industry, and government. And they do that through a number of different ways, sort of taking research from the lab to the market, taking students and helping them become entrepreneurs, and in general, just promoting innovation and startups and technology in Europe. Now, this worked wonderfully for around, I'd say, sort of 11, 12 years in 8 different communities, knowledge innovation communities, each community focusing on a different domain that was chosen according to a societal challenge that they recognize. So there's mobility, climate, health, food, sort of agri-tech, and others. There's actually a new one just starting this year called culture and creativity, which is sort of kind of different than the communities they had until now. 12 years, worked amazing in Europe. Around 4 years ago, they decided to expand beyond the borders of Europe and established a program called the Global Outreach Program, which started first with a hub in Silicon Valley. Again, the aim of it was to sort of focus on an innovation hotspot outside of Europe and to connect between what was going on in Silicon Valley to Europe. The second hub was established in Beijing, China, which due to sort of bad timing, COVID, political issues was discontinued. And we're the hub in Israel, a very strong hub, steadily growing, been around for 4 years now and still growing. What we do is we connect between the Israeli innovation ecosystem to the European innovation ecosystem through a number of different programs. We now have 7 programs that run on a yearly basis. Each of the programs is focused at a different stage of the startup life cycle. And again, if sort of putting it into context here, each of the programs is designed to further promote European-Israeli integration in the innovation, science, and technology fields. And then I'm not going to go into the programs now, but sort of one of the programs, if we sort of mentioned an academic focus, is a program that brings to Israel European researchers that want to learn from the Israeli know-how and best practices, how they can take their research from lab to market, for instance. So that's an example of one of the programs we run. Thank you, Adina. Thank you, all of you. I want to focus a little bit about the why. Why we see those activities taking place in Israel. So I want to start with Tal. And you can tell us a little bit about why does Novartis choose to be active with startups? And more than that, why Novartis decided to become active in Israel and globally? We know that Novartis exists in more than 100 countries, right? And what are the benefits from the activities there and around the world?
So I think in order to understand why Novartis has decided to play within the innovation space or go into the innovation space, you have to understand what's going on in healthcare overall. So when you look into healthcare is changing. You look at the global trends, you see population is aging, many more sick people. People are sick with cardiometabolic syndromes, which are generally lifelong. So people are more sick and they're sick longer and they live longer as well. So this is one side. On the other side, you see there is a decrease in the health faculty. So you see less physicians, less nurses. There is going to be bigger shortage. This will create an enormous overload on the healthcare system all across the world. Now, having said that, you see on the other side, you see technology accelerating, right? You see digital health blooming, especially after the COVID crisis. It accelerated it even much more. And you understand that technology will have to somehow help us gap or overcome these gaps that are caused by the global trends. We are a global pharmaceutical company. We do research and development. We develop new medications. We address new diseases or unmet needs of diseases. We don't know how to do technology. We're not Amazon. We're not Microsoft. We're not Google. We're not startups. And therefore, there is a need to integrate technology into our business. We see ourselves as a pharmaceutical company, not as just a company that is developing medication, but we understand that the consumers are changing. Patients are no longer just patients, they are consumers. They consume knowledge, they consume health, they consume services. And therefore, when we think about treating a disease, we're thinking about treating a disease as a whole, bringing not only the medication, but beyond the pill solutions as well. That will potentially help the customer, whether it's the patient or whether it's the healthcare system or whether it's the physicians themselves. And this is like the rationale of bringing innovation and technology into a pharmaceutical company. As I mentioned, I head the Biome, which is like the link between Novartis as the business and the digital health ecosystem. So we work with academia, with hospitals, with payers, with patient associations, exactly to help startups and tech companies work with a company like ours, which is very regulated. We work in a highly regulated environment. But this is the rationale. Why Israel? I think that, for me, this is a very obvious answer. When you look into the healthcare ecosystem in Israel, it is very advanced. And I look at that versus other Western European countries or even US. We have a very good healthcare system. It's centralized. I think the COVID vaccination was a great example showing how all the entities within the healthcare in Israel come together in order to drive a solution when we're in crisis. There's fully digitalized in healthcare. We have health electronic records for the past 25 years, cradle to grave. This is an enormous asset, which is not does not necessarily exist all around the world. So you have on one hand advantages coming from the healthcare system. Then again, when you look into the digital health ecosystem, I think per capita we have the largest ratio. We have something like around 600 digital health startups in Israel. That's a huge amount. 600 for a 9 million population, that's huge. You have the right mindset, the entrepreneurial spirit, you have the academia here, which pretty much goes into everything. So having Israel as an innovation center, that was a critical point for us. We decided to have a spot, to have a hub for innovation for Novartis in Israel, which is serving not only Israel, but serving Central Eastern European, with really the aim to export as much as technology as possible from here to the Novartis world.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Going back to Sarit, a little bit a different question. You mentioned before Rise in Europe. I guess everyone is familiar here, and we heard the signature on the Rise in Europe after Rise in 2020. So my question is, Israel as being associate country to Horizon Europe, what is the why is it so important, and what Israel have to gain from this? And you can elaborate more on the things you think are important on that matter.
Thank you. Horizon Europe is the ninth program, the internal program, and Israel joined as the first association country already in '96. It was open to association countries. Before that, it was only for member states. And the first country that, of course, emphasized the importance of the Israeli ecosystem as a country, as an associate country. The association, the official association, actually allows Israeli entities to participate in the program in equal terms as member states, which of course is a strategic asset to the Israeli economy, politically, of course, political relationship, and of course, for the investment in research and development. I would say, following what Tal mentioned about the uniqueness of the Israeli ecosystem, traditionally, of course, we know that Europe is strong, has a strong research, but the implementation is weak. And that was the importance of the Israeli ecosystem, with all the combination of the small ecosystem, very dynamic, innovative, test procedures that were extremely important for the Europeans to learn. And I guess also it's one of the reasons that why EIT have this here, why we have so many multinational R&D centers developing here for this quality and very cutting edge ecosystem here. We also, from our side, was wondering, and we were doing some research and assessment to understand the impact of the Israeli participation in the framework program in Horizon. As I said, we are already participating for 25 years, and we were wondering if maybe it's better to invest the same amount of money that Israel pays for the European Commission for local people for R&D, and actually found quite significantly a positive impact both in industry and academia. In the academia, we saw a great signal of the research of quality of research, which is much higher for the project we were participating in Horizon. A better collaboration with the international research community in Europe and also in the US. And also, of course, collaboration and reputation, a better reputation of the Israeli research and academia. In the industry, of course, there is a significant collaboration with multinational European companies that are key players in the consortia. And that, of course, open to the Israeli companies opportunities in cooperation with multinational pilot sites, labs, knowledge sharing, and of course to give the interest to the international European market, which of course offers a huge potential for Israeli players. So I would say this is a major impact what we gained, and of course, as the European, I've mentioned here before, gained from this innovative system.
Thank you, Sarit. In a second, we will touch even more about this matter. Going back to Adina, if I'm focusing on the why. So why EIT, after establishing a hub in Silicon Valley, decided to open a hub in Israel?
So I think we've all sort of kind of got used to the fact that Israel is sort of known as the startup nation. But just for a minute, I'll just say how mind-blowing I think it is that we're such a small country, and that after Silicon Valley and Beijing, that Tel Aviv was sort of chosen as the place to have a hub. It was originally called the EIT Hub Tel Aviv, by the way. It was changed to Israel, which is also an interesting decision. And excuse me. So the reason why the hub is in Israel, sort of you have to look at two different angles. One, the different communities in EIT had to agree. And I can now see that from close when EIT is now looking at choosing a location for a new hub, just how hard it is and just how amazing it is that they managed to agree on Israel. And it shows how Israel is strong in such a wide variety of different fields. So that was very significant in the choice. It wouldn't have happened if it had only been strong in the health tech field. It had to be across all different fields. And also there had to be some kind of benefit for Israel. So this was very important for EIT, that when they established the hub, this wasn't going to be just one-sided. It couldn't just be beneficial for Europe. It had to also be beneficial for Israel, which means that they had to have governmental support, which you can actually see through the way we work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through our strong collaboration with ISED and with the Israel Innovation Authority, the different programs we have there in collaboration. And all of the startups that we work with in Israel, we make it very, very clear that this has to be a win-win situation. So this was definitely one of the things that was taken into account, and we make sure that every program we do has, at the end of the day, we always say we're paid by the European Union. They're the ones who pay our salaries. But if there isn't a benefit to the Israeli ecosystem, we won't do it. So it has to be from both sides. So moving on to, we talked about the why for each of the organizations. And now we want to talk about the challenges. What is most challenging for each of the stakeholders if you want to work with Israel, Europe, and this connection? So I'm continuing with Adina. If you can share with us what do Israeli startups find the most challenging when they try to expand or to scale into Europe? Sure. So this is actually a major issue that we deal with quite a lot, as you can imagine. Excuse me. Israeli startups, their first tendency, and again, we're seeing a change in this, but their first tendency is to go to the US market. They find it much easier on a sort of from a language perspective, and that I can say sort of is the first challenge. When an Israeli startup wants to go to Europe, they are faced with I don't have a number of different languages, a number of different rules, laws, IP laws, legal issues that makes their expansion into Europe extremely difficult. Rather than going to the US, which gives them with one sort of law and one language access to a much broader community and market, in Europe, they're sort of very limited to each member state. So that I would say is one of the main challenges that we see a lot. And if they do choose to go to Europe, then automatically they choose to go like to the UK or Germany, sort of from the beginning, go to a bigger country and sort of expand from there. Another one we see is sort of a lack of awareness and knowledge. The knowledge coming from Europe is much less accessible than it is from the States. Much harder to understand exactly how you can approach the European system. And another challenge, which is interesting, and I think we can all relate to, is a lack of connectors. If we all think about how sort of the Israeli community and sort of the Jewish community is spread around the world, we can see by far a majority in the US. Meaning that if I choose to take my startup to the US market, I will very, very easily, if not through my own connections, through my neighbors' connections, find someone in New York or in Silicon Valley who can connect me to the right investors, to the right bank, to the right, I don't know, office space. Whereas in Europe, this is actually much, much harder. So it sounds like a pretend reason, but this is actually very real and very much the reason why we see startups skip over the European market and go to the US market. Thank you, Adina. Tal, I want to take you to the other side. What are the challenges, most challenging maybe for Novartis working in Israel with startups or just in general?
I think we share I share the same challenges as Adina just mentioned. So generally working with the Israeli startups, first of all, when they hear the name Novartis, then Novartis is a door opener. So because we're a multinational company, we have subsidiaries all around the world, and pretty much people understand it. If they get a chance to work with us, then potentially the world is open. But then again, as Adina mentioned, for us as well, the first question is, well, can we do a pilot in the US market? In healthcare, even more, the healthcare system in the US, Medicare is totally, totally different than the healthcare systems around Europe, which in some ways are more similar to the way that we operate. So this is, first of all, this is a challenge. And the challenge is double because from my interest as the person who is responsible, let's say, for Europe, for part of Europe, then my interest is bringing startups from Israel into the European market. So we pretty much have to explain that you have to go in milestones. So yes, you're validated in Israel, you've done the POC here, you've proved the success. Then again, let's look at a slightly bigger market. Let's see how you operate in other markets, which are language-wise different, healthcare-wise slightly different. The patient behavior is slightly different. And then when we prove that, or when we do a successful pilot there, then we can definitely scale. We have already a number of Israeli startups that are already working on a global level, but you have to go through that process. Now, from a startup point of view, they have relatively lean. They're relatively lean. They don't have endless resources. So when they look into their roadmap, it's difficult for them. Like when they direct themselves into the U.S. market, saying, "Oh, okay, let's do maybe a pilot in Romania or in Poland," or in UK or in Germany. So this is a challenge where you need to mitigate, on one hand, their desire to go into the U.S. market versus our interest of first showcasing, solution works in different markets before they go globally to the U.S.
Super interesting. Thank you. Sarit, I want to ask, what do Israeli organizations and academic institutes, if we're focusing on that, find the most challenging in Horizon Europe or in applying to Horizon Europe? Maybe if you can touch more about the difference between the industry and the academia players.
Thank you. Very important question. And yeah, the barriers for the European market were already mentioned by you here, and I will focus on Horizon. I would say the most challenging part of Horizon for both industry and academia players, Israeli players, are submission in consortia. There is a sort of anomaly here, because most of the budget of the program, the approach of the European Commission is actually very holistic in order to create integration between different countries, different entities. So basically, most of the program is actually based on that. 95% of the budget goes to a consortium submission in all thematic areas for all the entities, either if it's for a higher TLL or for basic research. While Israel is, both from academia and from the industry, are individual players. We like to do an individual submission, and we have an incredible success rate on that programs. While we have, a potential that is not used, of course, in the consultative part. And I say this is very challenging, but also ask for the government, for ICER, to try to figure out how to promote, or how to actually create a better impression for the Israeli audience in order to get there. So there is a few reasons for that. I would say, first of all, as mentioned, Europe is a bit less interesting, and the US is more natural for the Israeli entrepreneur. I would say also for the academia. Also, Israeli startups don't like to waste time. They want to have a fast result, and like sort of knowing that are in control and process. And while we're talking about submission to the European Commission, they feel like they don't really know the impact of the resources, time and processes of timeline. The academia will have additional problem, additionally to the lack of money and people and capacity of organize the operational part of the submission in the consortia. There is a lot of there is a variety of other grants that is very generous, and also with pursuit sometimes seems more prestigious in the essence of researchers. So I think this is the main challenge here for the Israeli that likes not to be independent on nothing, the individual submission. And I think there are like our success is incredibly significant in the consortia. This is a problem that we are keep going to try to figure out how to attack it from different aspects.
Thank you so much.
Before I continue, does anyone have a question or maybe wants to share a challenge when working with Europe? We are open for that as well. Yes, Tal.
So I guess this one is mostly for Sarid, but any of your response would be welcome, of course, too. My experience as an academic in social sciences is that it's extremely unrewarding to apply to European funds. And the reason is there's an enormous amount of hassle that is not academic when you apply. You have to write all kinds of lyrics about European integration and all kinds of various articles that the referees have that they have to tick that have nothing to do with science. And that makes it a very large investment. And then the problem is, in the end, is that Israeli academics, by their promotion processes, are completely oriented on the United States. That's all that matters in promotion of the Israeli universities. What has been happening in the recent decade or two is that there has been a slowing Americanization of European academia, but only in places like Germany, some parts of the lowlands, not that they're low, but they're geographic, Denmark. You see places like Italy and France that are very, perhaps purposefully, resistant to this Americanization, and that is to their disadvantage. They're made silos in that Italian academics write in Italian, and French academics still pretend that French, sorry, I'm upsetting someone, is a language of science globally. And so because they have these national projects so intertwined into the way science is institutionalized in these countries, they remain silo, which means they, by definition, cannot achieve high achievements in science, because that only happens when you open up and you integrate in a very large pool of brains. And so it's hard to find partners there. And then when you do apply, you get these funny referees who like down on you from another planet, have nothing to do with the way we understand science, because they are in a national science project of their own, and that derails your whole application. So I've long ago, don't even bother to apply to European funds because of this. This is a major. Now, this is social sciences, and I know there have been more successful social scientists than myself, and maybe they'll tell you that, it works for them. But maybe political science is in particular prone to these things than other sciences. I don't know. But that is a major challenge. So I wonder if this is just my story.
Well, partially it's a bit more like, I think that most of the focus goes to, there is a problem for social sciences, but most of the money goes to health, climate, Green Deal, and there is much more opportunities and also professional opportunities and funding there. So this is one problem. There is a bureaucracy, I'll call it bureaucracy in all the programs, but yet once you do a submission once or twice, actually it's sort of repeat itself, and then you waste less effort and time on that, and the potential of the collaboration is getting higher because you are much more related to knowledge sharing with other researchers, to networks, and also European really like to reinvest in projects that were already won a budget or a grant. So once you are you don't resist, or you are not you're not losing the motivation, even if you have one, or if you had to invest some time and money on a bad application or on the biography part, I would say, then at the end of the day, we know researchers that are I'm talking about now academia, that are doing resubmission all the time because of the networking, because of the interest to research communities, which is actually fruitful for their own researchers, and of course to be open to the research, the European research infrastructure, which I must say could really promote the Israeli part on that, because we have here much done in research to do with it.
Yes.
I guess we are all aware of political disagreements between Europe, many European countries and Israel. And this was always also in the background of participating in Horizon. And luckily, again and again, we overcame this problem and we are participating in Horizon. And I would like to hear your experiences. Is it a good example of indeed overcoming those political issues, leaving them behind and working together? Or do you feel now and then those tensions? And also from the part of the startups or private companies, do they feel sometimes disadvantaged compared to others because of this political in the background?
Political background, I will leave my colleague here from Elena to answer this question, because I think you could be give much more information, but from the startup point, from the industry point,
Or academia,
professional, even academia. When it comes at the end of the day to submission, it's people that are talking to people, entities. It's completely professional, very efficient under the constraints of the European Commission. But yet, at the end of the day, we don't see any difference, not in the evaluation, not in the collaboration. Actually, Israel is very, has a very great potential and reputation in monetary. Startups are very, very
so that's what I was going to add as well, that when we say sort of Israel, we're saying we're having a roundtable with Israeli and European organizations that are looking to build a consortia for Horizon Europe.
Maybe that
they want to come.
They want to come, and you have like plenty of interest to work with Israel. Actually, when we go to Europe, and I think all of us could agree about that, they think they are not aware that we are such a small country with limited sources because of that. So I would say from the industry part, also from academia, it certainly you don't see any difference after we're in the program. The political is a bit more sensitive, and then I'd be happy actually to hear your opinion on that if possible.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question, so maybe I refer to that and then I go to the question. Well, I could have always talked to the Minister Fanny first, but basically, I think that on the ground, and that's the important thing. I mean, as you mentioned, we have to overcome certain challenges when there's a negotiation, for example, of every horizon. And of course, we can discuss it in the governmental panel afterwards. I mean, this is an important background to all our formal relations with the EU. My area is trade relationship, but of course in other areas as well. But what's important, and I think that's exactly what we just heard from Sarit, is that once you get over that, and hopefully, we manage those political issues at the moment of signing the agreement, joining, etc. Afterwards, on the implementation level, I'm encouraged by the answer, and that's what I know that it kind of works. In my area, from time to time, there are issues that come up, and of course, our job as a government is to assist and the companies if there is a need to, and well, it's complicated. We can follow up on that if you want later. And my question, if I may, what I wanted to raise was coming from the public policy, obviously, the angle of current relational developments in the EU. So maybe a question for Tal, how do you see the balance that needs to be struck and the developments on the regulational front vis-a-vis emerging technologies and AI, cyber possibly, digital market acts, digital services. So these are data governance kind of issues, data privacy issues, and the implications on innovation. Obviously, it's there's a balance to be kind of striking, but do you have any concerns, from private sector point of view? That's one part. And on the governmental, do you think, or maybe Sarit, is there more room for government to government
cooperation. We see that US-EU Trade and Technology Council dealing with those kind of issues, and how do you see that in terms of Israel and the EU?
So maybe I can answer some of the regulatory parts to some extent. If I refer to Israel regarding regulation, I think we're lagging behind. So, and it pretty much depends who of course we compare us to. Okay, and I'm not comparing us to the U.S. market, because in healthcare, as I mentioned, they're a totally different market. They're a business to consumer, whereas we are business to business, considered business to consumer. But if you compare like Israel to German legislation has created the DIGA Act, the Digital Health Act for Germany, which pretty much looks at digital health technologies as, let's say, they compare it to a medication. So when you reimburse a medication, you can reimburse a digital health solution. And that creates a fact that when a patient goes into a physician's office and gets prescribed a medication, he can at the same time get prescribed with a digital health solution, which can be an application, a sensor, a medical device, anything like that. So Germany is like our benchmark. When you look into Israeli government legislation, we're not there yet. So there is when you look into medication, yes, there's the national reimbursement system, which is great. But then again, if you want to include digital health solutions, currently that is not the case. And this is like a very big gap that we have to overcome. If I look at GDPR, then we are aligned with Europe. So when in Israel, when you talk to startups, the Israeli startups, then like one of the first questions are you GDPR compliant, HIPAA compliant? Because we are aligning ourselves to Europe as well. So we're pretty much going there. As a European company, we are obliged to apply with the GDPR laws as well, even if we are located here and working here. So in some ways, we're starting to align, but then again, I see a very big gap that the government has to overcome with respect to regulation and legislation as well.
Good. You wanted to ask Sarit as well?
Yeah, I will just add that there is some pieces. Of course, it's Horizon and the platform of Horizon. Of course, it's the implementation of the EU policy, which of course included the regulation, and all the countries, member states, and associations are part of the program, so they have a voice in order to influence, of course, and the interests, the local interests and the national interests, in trying to also reach some conflict. But yet, I would say that in practice, the best way to actually solve it is the collaboration, because once you have the implementation of the collaboration with the multinationals, then at the end of the day, you have influence the regulation and like the interest, and you have some real material actually to discuss. When it's like more like at the political level, it's a bit more hard to close that gap, especially in the sensitivities, I would say, the health regulation, for example, and others as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. I mean, I think that one of the current problems is that not enough people know about the EAT. We spoke about it with Shavina, but I think that you need to have a much bigger outreach in Israel. That's something we can work together on. Okay? I would like two subjects to ask you. I mean, do you see, and it's a big follow the question of we see differences in response between different countries. I presume that when you bring an Israeli startup corporation, you said that everybody wants to participate, but I do remember that you had some political problem in some countries, so maybe you can, and where there's a difference in the attitude of startups, maybe you can see which countries within the EU are more open than others, whether the Scandinavian or whatever. That would be interesting to know if you have. And obviously there are some countries where there are more political problems. The other question is, it's always something that troubles me, that the relation with the Commission. because there is this, the horizon, and you have something else, the EIT. Maybe you can just a bit more emphasize what is the difference of your activity with the IIA, I mean with the Horizon program.
Okay, so I'll start with your first question. Honestly, in the 4 years we've existed, and perhaps sort of Mayan can correct me, we haven't felt any main sort of political difference from countries in their approach to work with Israeli startups or Israeli programs. This has been our experience. Maybe perhaps people chose not to work with us for these reasons, but this is not something that's been brought to us. Honestly, I'm not just saying this just to sugarcoat anything. The responses we receive are that people, especially through EIT, are excited to work with us. They see this as a huge advantage and access for them to an ecosystem that for them has a lot to offer. So this has been our experience. Maybe we're not experiencing all of it. This is honestly what we've had. Excuse me. And from the countries, I mean, my answer is that we do receive a stronger need to work with us from what are considered sort of southern and eastern European countries. Basically, the countries that sort of the need is more. So for instance, if we open programs, we do see a stronger application rate from Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe. So that I can say that they're looking more for Israel. And your second question, sort of more like the difference between what EIT does and ICERD. So that's a good question, but if we sort of have to put it in sort of in categories, I'd say that EIT can connect you to a number of different roads and aspects. So for instance, some of the organizations that reach out to us, they would reach out with questions to do with Horizon, and we would know to connect them to ICERD and to the Israeli Innovation Authority. So which I'd say that ICERD has sort of like a more structured role here in Israel as being the sort of the governmental connection between Europe, the European Commission, and the Israeli government. It's actually an Israeli government body that's here to provide that.
Also, our budget, of course, for the European Commission comes from the Israel Treasury Office, while EIT is funded by the Commission, which is a major difference about the motivation.
Yeah. Only the Commission or also private companies?
Excuse me, our funding specifically, because we're not, EIT has 8 different communities called KICS, Knowledge Innovation Community. Each of those communities is funded 50% through public funding, 50% through private funding. We're not one of those KICS. We're sort of like an odd bird there. We're like a global outreach hub that's funded through European Commission money. We do, however, have to show every year that we are able to bring in our own income, which has to grow every year. We have like a 10-15 year goal of becoming financially sustainable. But that's the European Commission principle for all of their communities. They're lowering the public funding every year and are expected to bring in a certain amount of revenue. So that's the function.
Make income.
Oh, I have a whole presentation on monetization.
Okay.
But in general, each of our programs has a business model. So we don't actually function like a nonprofit. We function like a startup, like a business. And we have, for instance, an accelerator program for startups that is funded. Each track has an industry partner who pays an amount of money to be associated with the program. It makes them look very innovative. They're sort of in there with startups. They receive deal flow. They receive access to the startups. They receive a lot of knowledge. And that's, for instance, one of our business models. We have a number.
And I can just go and visit the office. It's a very nice place. Very nice, very good presentation.
But I'll have to pay something.
No, it's
Bring your own lunch.
a great location and view for the sea. I would say, but by the way, Danny, that in Horizon participation, you see better success stories or collaboration with either entities with Western Europe or even Scandinavia, because they are actually more active in Horizons than the Eastern countries, and of course the European Commission is trying to bridge that gap. But I would say that in Scandinavia we find a problem with the entrepreneurs, because I don't think it's a political issue. It's more like a cultural issue that I would say you could see the difference much more from the Western countries, Western Europe countries than Scandinavia. There is something about the race, the behavior, the language that is actually sort of a great barrier in the connection and the communication between Israeli entities. And I would not say it's political. I would say it's something that is more cultural, and we try to figure that as well.
One little question more.
Yeah.
When it comes to the problems you all mentioned of bureaucracy and the difficulties for Israelis because of their culture to deal with the large bureaucratic procedures and so, is there a difference, a major difference between EIT and Horizon, or is with regards to is it more centered, centrally dealt with by the Commission or by the member states? Is there something to say about that? Who do you have to deal with?
For us, it's the Commission. We have to.
Also for us, the Commission. Okay, you have one part, the submission was consented itself. Then you need to actually connect the different entities in the consortium. So here you have like sort of a networking, national, let's say business development or PR and public relationship involvement. At the end of the day, the submission itself is under the Commission constraints, and here you have lots of bureaucracy. I would say that easily when government is more involved, then you have very high correlation between bureaucracy and governmental influence. And here, I think one of the major problems of the Consortium Commission is the fact that the process takes long, the evaluation process takes long, some of the stages of the submission because of bureaucracy is a bit less tempting.
But then governments are involved, member state governments?
No, the Commission. But for me, the Commission is like the major government actually in charge of the whole arrival process.
And EIT, when an Israeli startup wants to start something in Europe, he has to deal with the member state or with the Commission?
It would depend. We try and keep it sort of like within the program. So we take care of the bureaucracy. We get funding from the European Commission to run a program. We get audited on this by the end of the year, but a startup taking part in the program will be within this. So we've already taken care of the bureaucracy. And again, sort of you joke sort of having to pay to come, honestly.
That's worth it.
But not just that, I will say, like within these business models I'm talking about, for us, it's very important that the startup doesn't pay. So if our end goal is to strengthen the startup and the entrepreneur and the people who are sort of gaining in the programs, they will not have to pay for our services. Okay, our business models are sort of from different angles, but that's very, very important to us. So we offer, like for instance, Tal, you mentioned difficulty going to submitting a consortium for Horizon. One of the services we offer is a consultant. So the sort of, I'm not just, you can't just say, oh, I need an 8 hours consultant, I'll give it to you. It has to be sort of within some kind of roundtable that we arrange. But you could come to me and say, look, I've seen a Horizon Europe call in the field of agri-tech. Can you help? And I'd say, okay, let's get together, let's work together with ISED, let's bring 10 European organizations interested in this call, 10 Israeli organizations interested in this call. Everyone will have the chance to present themselves, talk to each other, see who could be potential partners. And then us at EIT will fund, a professional expert consultant who will give 10 hours of his time to make sure that you're submitting the best proposal possible, and they have the experience to take away all of this headache. So that's something we offer, for instance. Yes.
I have a question also to Adina about the history of the Tel Aviv Hub. This was an initiative of the Commission. It was an initiative of several European countries. What extent the state of Israel was involved in? Did you present yourself? My name is Rafael Baran,
former Director General.
Retired.
Well, we do work as well with the Foreign Ministry. So this was, I hope I'm answering this correctly. But at the end of the day, this was actually initiated by EIT. It was actually initiated by the climate community of EIT, as they sort of had the strongest interest at the time of establishing a hub in Israel. The process was that they reached out to EY. EY conducted a professional survey that would provide insights into the interests of EIT and the European Commission in investing in a hub here in Europe. And to do that, they had to show in this document, in this report, that the state of Israel not only had an interest to be a part of, to have an EIT hub there, but that they would also contribute financially and sort of with their time, which is why until today, for instance, we have a program that runs, it's been running now for 3 years in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance, that trains European diplomats who are based here in Israel and sort of has sort of like an in-depth 1-week program that saves them about 2 years of learning about the ecosystem and lets them sort of just get on straight away with their job. So absolutely in complete collaboration. And for instance, I can tell you that a hub was supposed to be established in the UK since last year, since Brexit. They realized that they needed some kind of global outreach hub to deal with it, and just for political reasons it's not being established, whereas in Israel very quickly it was able to be established.
We have a minute too.
Quarter to we are about
We have the time. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked about the challenges, so what are the next steps? So I think I want to catch anyone for small talk or afterwards, feel free, and thank you for listening. And
amazing. Thank you so much for this very special panel. And now we've earned, I think, our coffee break. At 12 o'clock sharp, we are